Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Sorry. Good evening, and welcome to our final talk and event. Peace in an Anxious World. Yeah, that's the title of the piece. I'm just going to quickly do a little bit of housekeeping and a little bit of an intro again to the exhibition upstairs. Welcome to those of you that haven't been to one of the talks or even the wild quiz that we had at the start of our International Women's Day event. The exhibition is called Through the Eyes of Women, and we put a call out to artists, female artists, to respond to the question, what does faith mean to you in a modern world? And we had an incredible response from people who identify as atheists, agnostic, spiritual, Christian, non-Christian, or just saw art as a process and part of their own faith. And in the week that's just gone by, we're nearly there now. Tomorrow is our final day of the exhibition, open 9 to 5, in case you didn't know and wanted to come back. Please do. We've had amazing conversations with people from the public and from our own church community who've made their own personal responses to the art pieces. And we've had quite emotional responses. We've had angry responses. I think the worst one I had was a couple that went through in 5 minutes, came straight back out, and the gentleman said to me, well, I only like two. Do you mind? And then he went on 5 minutes. And I was like, rude. So fair enough, it's not for everyone, and you're not going to like everything. But the pieces have been very powerful, and as a rule, it has spoken to people, okay? And we've been very fortunate. We've sold 3 pieces in our exhibition, and people have expressed a lot of interest in the others. I wanted to read a little bit of the 2 blurbs of 2 of the pieces that have sold, okay? One is from the ceramicist, Faye Mayo, who is a devout Christian, and she has a strong connection with our church, and she lives in Crawley, which is so far away, but she knows many of us in our community. And her piece is The Vessel at the Front. So if you didn't have a good look, do go and have a good look afterwards. And it says, this stoneware vessel hints at a stretching feminine form drawn out of what was once malleable clay. It echoes a deliberate act of bringing her into being. The making process remains visible on the exterior surface with ripples and the maker's marks impressed into the clay. With thinned walls and feathered edges, the form appears fragile, reflecting the vulnerability of human life. This is where I should have brought my glasses. Faye's intention is to draw your eye to the interior, where watery blue, refreshing tones flow. The gold script, taken from Psalm 23, describes the relationship that could bring peace to a soul. And that really spoke to me. I thought that was very powerful. And then looking at her piece, many of her pieces are quite similar in that way, but very, very powerful. And today we had a very emotional response to the piece called Courage by Fiona Reynolds. It's the one with, it's an A4 size one, it's one with the trees and the colourful sunsets. And in it there is a soldier, which is actually the artist, and she is in the RAF reserves. And she said she doesn't really have a faith as such, but this is what she believes. This painting is inspired from my belief that women can be powerful. Sometimes things are harder as a woman, and often we face more challenges beyond those always visible to others. But with the right determination and support, I believe a woman can do anything. She's got 3 jobs. And she's very young. She knows my son, who recommended her. And myself, and 2 others who were stewarding, we stood around it and we had a little sob around this piece because it spoke so much to a member of our church community that she stood and testified to us. And it brought out a story about her that none of us knew. So the artwork is having a profound effect, and I think in a very positive way. So please do go back up again, grab a drink if you want to and a cake, and have another good look at the pieces. And it's worth reading the little blurbs by the artist, because these are as powerful as the art pieces themselves. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sophia. Or just one last thing. If, God forbid, something terrible happens like a fire or whatever, we're all going to leg it out the door at the back, and Hal's going to lead the charge as the tall gentleman at the back. Or we're all going to leg it out the front, and we're going to escape up the stairs. Okay.
Follow the trousers.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sophia to introduce.
Hello everybody, my name is Sophia, for people who don't know. Who don't know me, I'm a counsellor and I come to this church. I also love to come to the Art Fringe on a Monday evening when I can, and I'm very grateful to the Art Fringes who have arranged this whole event, lots of hard work, and also for creating just a gorgeous space and community and encouragement to do art, which I'd never had before, so I love that very much. And it's thanks to the Art Fringe that one summer's evening I was sitting by the rowing club talking to Jess, who is one of our speakers tonight. She is a children's counsellor. At that time I was also working with children and I was looking for a supervisor, and she said, oh, why don't you have a word with Lindsay? And I thought, well, yeah, okay, why not? And that was 1.5 years ago. And Lindsay, who is a family therapist, well, she very kindly agreed to work with me, and she started initially working with me as my supervisor, and now she is a co-therapist with me, and we work with couples and families at the Bridges Centre in Monmouth. So it's such a joy to have them both here, and I really look forward to hearing what they have to say. So let's welcome them with a big round of applause, please.
Well, thank you, Sophia. What a generous introduction. To be honest, any evening where there's cake, I am right there. So, cake, and whenever I go to an art exhibition, I always feel very cultured. So cake and culture is great. We don't even need to do our talk because we don't have to be incredible. So I, as Sophia said, am a counsellor with under 18s. I also am a mum. I have 3 little ones. And I also come to the Art Fringe on a Monday evening. It's a very fun place to be. I recommend it. My 7-year-old said to me this week, "You're not an artist, mummy, you're a mummy." So I don't have any grand aspirations, but I'm anything more really than a counsellor with under 18s and a mum.
Oh. Well, I'm Lindsay, as Sophia said, and it is so nice to be here. I've never come down here. I came last year, I think it was, or was it 2 years ago, to the Art Fringe. Was it last year?
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
So I didn't realise there was all this down here as well, and it's been really, I had a very quick look around at the pictures, but I'm glad that it's going to be open afterwards as well. So a little bit about me. I have recently moved to the Monmouth area from West London, where I was leading a church alongside my husband Mark. I work, as Sophia said, as a family therapist in the NHS with children and families. I have 5 children and 4 grandchildren. And Jess and I have known each other for a very long time. I have known Jess, in fact, all her life. And she has known me for just over half of mine. And in case you don't know why people are laughing, it's because some people know that we're mother and daughter. I think probably most of you do know that, which actually makes working in this way rather nice, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Now, I could tell you lots of stories about Jess, and she could probably tell you some about me. I've taught her lots of things. I taught her to drive. which I have to say was quite stressful at times. When we would get to the end of the road and I would say stop, and then she wouldn't stop, and I would say stop, stop, and she would say all right. Careering out into the road. I have to say, it was quite stressful. What have you taught me?
I've taught you how to teach someone to drive.
I guess you have. She's not going to say what she's taught me. She's way too modest, but she has taught me a lot. And I think I just want to say we probably have taught each other things. We've learnt things from each other. But I guess what I would say is that we are both on a continual journey now together of learning about and working with mental health, and that's something that really kind of connects us and something that we really enjoy.
So this week we've been celebrating women and art and faith, and it's all been in the context of International Women's Day, which was last Saturday. And this evening we want to talk about how to thrive in a world that can feel anxious for lots of us a lot of the time. And you might be here for your own benefit, or you might be thinking about someone else, maybe a family member or a friend who you're keen to support. And we hope that some of what you hear this evening will go some way to meeting that hope. So it's Friday evening, and I wonder how your week has been. I wonder whether it's been busy, whether you've been working or looking after children, maybe yours or someone else's, or maybe you volunteer, maybe a mixture. And I wonder if you've given yourself a chance to think about how you're feeling right now. So that's what we're going to do. Just close your eyes for a moment, and I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to take a deep breath and just think about how you're feeling right now. Okay, open your eyes. So what's going on for you? It might be that you're feeling okay, maybe rested or content or happy. If so, I wonder what's helped with that. Or maybe you're not feeling quite yourself. Maybe you've had an overwhelming week. Or maybe you feel lonely or disconnected, perhaps. Maybe you feel anxious. Maybe about health, finances, work, family. And some of that may come out in your body. So maybe a headache or an upset tummy, or maybe it affects your sleep. I know that happens to you, doesn't it? You often say that you lie awake with things on your mind.
Absolutely, I would say that. I've definitely known periods in my life when I, at night time, I'll be awake for maybe an hour or two, just thinking about the things that are worrying me. So I guess I would say that I would like to think that these are kind of normal feelings, like those kinds of feelings of anxiety and sleeplessness, because we all go through different periods, don't we, of anxiety. And we say, I would say kind of periods or seasons of anxiety, but it might be even shorter times than that. If we had asked you that same question, or if Jess had asked you that same question, how are you feeling right now? If she'd asked you that this morning, or maybe if she were to ask you that later this evening, your answer might have been different, because we can change, our kind of mental state can change almost from 1 hour to the next, definitely 1 week to the next, but almost, smaller time frames than that. Personally, for me, I can often feel anxious on waking in the morning, and it's a horrible feeling. Those of you who have had that will know that horrible feeling, maybe racing heart, kind of tummy, butterflies. But I've noticed that if I can acknowledge it and then get up and go for a run, which I do a couple of times a week, then when I come home, often that feeling of anxiety will have gone. And then for the rest of the day, I feel okay. It's weird, isn't it? It is weird. But we do know that our bodies are very much linked to our minds and our emotions. So maybe it's not that surprising, because we are whole people, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. A couple of thoughts about our feelings as we've begun to think about how we're feeling. A couple of thoughts about what we're feeling right now. Firstly, is that feelings give us information. They're really important because they give us information. Information about our immediate environment, about how we're coping with our current context, and information that we can then use to make decisions and stay safe. So some people like to think of them, of feelings, as a bit like a fuel gauge in your car, which tells you what you need to keep going and kind of alerts you to changes that you might need to make. So a full fuel tank, if you get in, you know, don't you, that you're good to keep driving. You can start the engine and you can go on a good long journey. A tank that's on low needs filling up before you drive off, or at least you need to go to the petrol station before you go too far. Our emotional tank lets us know how much energy we have for doing what we need to do. Different things use that energy up, so maybe work or your caring responsibilities, and then different things refill it. So it might be social connection, or maybe your work refills it. Different things use it up and refill it. And feelings are one way of alerting us to what we need to do to keep that tank filled. And feelings lead us to react in particular ways. So if we were out in the park and we saw a fierce dog, we might feel fear, which would lead us probably to run away, or maybe respond by perhaps acting in a calm way but quickly going in the other direction. That would be me. If we feel joy when we're out walking with a friend, we'll be motivated to do that more. If a friend is upset, we'll often mirror that feeling of upset, increasing our feeling of empathy and deepening connection. So feelings cause us to respond in different ways, and they give us information about what's going on for us. The second thing about feelings is it's really important not to believe everything that you see on the surface. So we have primary and secondary emotions. The secondary emotion is the one that you see on the surface. So maybe you see anger or irritation from somebody. You think, oh, that person is angry, or they're irritated. Often the primary emotion, though, is right underneath, and that could be fear or anxiety. And some people say it's almost as though anger is sort of is fear's bodyguard. So, there's the fear is underneath, but the anger is on the outside, kind of protecting the fear, as it were. And the anger it's only what you see on the outside. There's so much more that's going on underneath. And if we can notice and try to understand the feelings that are underneath the anger, then we'll better know how we're doing and what we need to do in order to move to a stronger position. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay.
So why are we doing this talk now? Why do we need to think about anxiety? 1 in 4 of us every year will have mental health challenges. So maybe worry, anxiety, depression. In 2010, the smartphone came out, and between then and 2015, so in those first 5 years, in the US, teenage depression increased by 150%. So I'm in my mid-30s, and it's the generation below me, so anyone born kind of after about 1995, they're Generation Z, in case you want to know. And they're the ones who have been really affected by smartphones and social media and everything that has brought. And that includes rates of self-harm. So amongst teenagers in the UK, in those first 8 years since the smartphone came out, for girls, self-harm increased by 78%, and for boys, self-harm increased by 134%. So it's quite scary. There's a book, those stats are taken from this book, it's called The Anxious Generation, by Jonathan Haidt, which I expect lots of you have read. And he says this, The first generation of Americans who went through puberty with smartphones in their hands became more anxious, depressed, self-harming and suicidal as a result. It's quite scary. So mental health challenges, they are pervasive. They're a fact of modern life and they're nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, they're something that probably we all will experience at one time or another. So we need to not hide things from each other, and we need to support and encourage each other, which is part of the point of this evening of talking about it. There's something that Jesus said, which summarises this nicely. He said this: "In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, but be brave, for I have overcome." And when he says that, he is meaning that we will for sure have difficult, challenging, hard times, but that the hope that Jesus offers for enduring those hard times is stronger than any of the problems that we might face. And that's something that we have both taken great comfort in, isn't it, in the different challenges that we've gone through.
Yeah, and we'll tell you about one of those right at the end of today. But I just want to slightly shift now, and I want to ask you, I wonder how much you know about how our brains work, or how your brain works. You probably, lots of you probably do know quite a bit, but I'm just going to kind of summarise. And this is, I mean, I hope, are there any psychiatrists here, by the way? This is a very, very simple summary of everyone's looking around to say, that would be interesting. So I am not a psychiatrist, but this is a very simple way of describing what goes on for us in terms of anxiety. So there are different parts of the brain which are connected by neural pathways. There are two main parts. The two main parts are the prefrontal cortex, so the rational brain, which is only capable of logic and can only process 5 pieces of information at a time. Okay, that's the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. And its role is to help us think, to weigh up pros and cons of a decision, perhaps do our work, our job, anything that we have to do where we have to really think. The other part of our brain, main part, is the limbic system and amygdala, so the emotional brain. So that's not logical at all, the emotional brain, the logical, rational brain, the emotional brain. And that emotional brain receives information through our senses, and it can process 2 million concepts at any one time. So the rational is 5 concepts, the emotional is 2 million. And its role is to help us to make unconscious decisions to keep us safe. So information comes in through our senses. Maybe we smell something, we perhaps smell burning and in the kitchen, and we think, oh, the kitchen's on fire, heart pounds, and then we run in there and we say, oh no, it's all right, it's just a little bit of something that got caught on the cooker and it's fine, it's not. So, we smell something, maybe we hear something or we see something, and all the while we're assessing through our emotional brain whether what we are hearing or seeing or smelling is safe. And if it is safe, we just kind of carry on, we move on. If it's not safe, it lets us know that we're under threat. And adrenaline and cortisol get produced, and that triggers a response in our body and mind, increasing fear, and we go into a state of high alert. Does anyone know what that's called, that state of high alert? Yeah, exactly, fight or flight. That's what it's called. Sometimes some people say fight, flight or freeze. And when this happens, the rational brain, it's quite clever, you might not think this, but it's actually quite clever. The rational brain shuts off so that we can protect ourselves, because we haven't got time to think if we're in danger. There's no time for us to do any thinking. We just need to be protected. So our rational brain shuts off so that we don't have time to think, and we can just deal with the danger and run away from it or fight it, whatever it is that we need to do. A millennia ago, the human brain developed in that way in order to protect people from wild animals, from predators. They literally had to protect them to be safe. And even now, that process is really useful when we're in a state of actual physical danger. At times like that, we're glad to have our anxiety or our fear to keep us safe, aren't we? Our brain can react for us, as it were, before we've even had time to think. So for example, you let go of something hot or something makes you jump, and you start to move away before you've even had a chance to consider who or what it was. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's quite clever, isn't it? So it's normal to feel anxious, for example, if you're out in the dark by yourself. And you actually need to be on high alert in order to keep yourself safe. It's normal to feel anxious when you're on the beach and the tide is coming in. It's actually not just normal, it's really necessary. That happened to your mother-in-law, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. The other day she was on a beach a couple of weeks ago, and then she suddenly realised the tide was coming in behind her, and she had to absolutely just turn and wade through, but some other people, it was too late and they had to have the lifeboat. So yeah, she needed to be absolutely on high alert because she was wading already through to her hips, and she didn't have time to take her wellies off. She told me.
She probably hadn't been on high alert enough, to be honest. Let's be honest. I think it's clever I said that. Strange as it may seem, anxiety is actually your friend when you're in danger. Have you ever thought that anxiety is your friend? Have you ever thought that anxiety is actually your friend? Maybe you haven't, but it absolutely is when you're in danger, because it helps you.
Did that turn off everything?
Yeah.
Good. Everything's going off now, including the fire alarm. Okay, so anxiety is your friend when you're in danger because it helps you to keep yourself safe.
Is this going to be really distracting? Let me just, it's going to distract us all if I don't sort it out.
What do you want
Is
us to
anyone
do?
better than this? Just choose HDMI. Thank you. So, those are the physical threats. But there are also social threats that our anxiety alerts us to, and those are more the focus for us today. And it's been really important for our survival over time for us to be included as part of a group. So being part of families, communities, where our different needs can be met. So when we come up against threats to our inclusion in groups, it naturally causes us to feel anxious. So we feel threatened by a fear of rejection by friends, or of not fitting in, or worries about what other people think of us. Fears of being away from particular people, of loneliness or failure, or of crowded places or isolated ones. And our unconscious emotional brain deals with those things in the same way as the physical threats, as if we're in danger of attack by a wild animal. So rather than dealing with it logically and rationally, using our prefrontal cortex, we react via our limbic system and our anxiety rises. And lots of us live in that kind of heightened state of alert lots of the time. You could call it stress, but I think particularly teenagers perhaps, you could call it stress. I don't know if you can relate to that. I know that I can at times. And anxiety or stress is like a bully. And if we let it, it can rob us of the things we want to enjoy. So our social life, going out with friends and meeting people who will enrich our lives. Doing exams, maybe going to uni, or going to an interview and getting a job that we really hope for. Enjoying your children, or enjoying the present moment. I wonder what anxiety spoils for you, or for someone that you know. And the problem is that the more we worry, the more we worry. and our brain gets used to going into that fight-flight response. And the neural pathways that carry those anxious thoughts get strengthened. So the more we think something, the easier it is to think it. And we can develop unhelpful patterns of thinking and find ourselves believing negative thoughts about ourselves. Apparently, I'm not sure how they counted this, but we have 70,000 thoughts a day. And 80% of those apparently are negative. But thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are just thoughts, and they come and they go. They're not facts, and that's really important when you're thinking about how to manage your negative thoughts. So just have a think for a moment, and maybe turn to the person next to you. What negative thoughts do you most easily fall into thinking? Do you believe them? And what negative thoughts do you fall into thinking? Just for 30 seconds.
Not remembering winging it, yeah. Oh, really? Very. Keep it facing everything. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just draw us back together. I know that wasn't very long, but hopefully it just got you thinking. And in a bit, we're going to kind of come back to some of those, or at least one of them, or potential one, and we're going to show you an exercise that you can maybe do to challenge that thought, or the ones that you most often think. Now, as Christians, we believe that God cares about everything that goes on in this world. So suffering, sadness, poverty, hunger, sickness, conflict, people having to leave their homes as refugees. He cares about everything, and he cares about each person that he's made. I don't know what you think about that. I don't, there may be, it might be that you've come with a friend, you may not even sure what you think about God at all. And that's absolutely fine. Everyone is welcome this evening, but it might be that you have thought about that, and you do believe that. Because we believe that God has infinite wisdom, and that he's shared that freely with us through the Bible to show us how to live. And I actually think that God knew that we would struggle with anxiety long before we knew anything about modern life or how our brains work. I think he knew. Because the Bible tells us in so many places what to do with fear. It tells us not to fear. So many places. And what to do with difficult thoughts. There's lots in the Bible that talks about God being with us, and that remembering that he's with us will help us to manage in those difficult times. For example, listen to this one from a book called Philippians 4. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Lovely, isn't it? That's what we're saying, finding peace in an anxious world. It's right there in the Bible. Elsewhere it says this: encourage each other and build one another up. Do you know, research has shown loneliness and anxiety to be connected, which actually makes sense. If you think about it, being alone, for example, in the middle of the night, is often when our thoughts can lead us down unhelpful paths. That's often the time, isn't it, when we're by ourselves in the dark. Being with others, on the other hand, provided that they're kind and supportive, that can hugely decrease feelings of anxiety, can't it?
I expect lots of you know the Christmas story of Mary, who suddenly finds herself pregnant as a teenager. And I think she's a good example of this. She, I imagine, felt hugely anxious at the prospect of what she might be about to lose as a result of this pregnancy. Her fiance, Joseph, her marriage prospects kind of generally, her financial future. And the first thing she does is she travels 90 miles to visit her cousin. And she stays there for 3 months. She knew she needed support. And so she went to a friend who she knew would support and encourage her. And when we feel anxious, having support is so important. Sharing worries with somebody encouraging can be really, really helpful. All through the Bible, it recommends it, sharing with God through prayer, but also sharing with other people. So just turn to the people next to you again for another 30 seconds. Who can you talk to who's a helpful support?
You're sitting right here.
I know, I'm being funny. But yeah. Oh yeah, him, yeah. All the time. Poor guy. Must like his something. Mental. How you guys?
Yeah. That's my sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister.
My sister.
Sister from another mother. Yeah. I'm trying to form relationships with people that are almost family. Yeah.
You find
Like having a sister.
you find each other.
Yeah.
Or God puts you in each other's way.
You
I
can
never
always
had a
choose them as well. We're having this conversation about relative friendship.
Hey,
Friends you
we're going to
can.
put you back together. In another place in the Bible, we read this: "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." What does that mean? I think it means that our minds can be renewed. We don't have to stay in those old, unhelpful patterns of thinking. We can actually weaken those neural pathways that Jess was talking about that carry those difficult thoughts. We can weaken them, and our minds can be renewed, and we can be transformed, and we can know peace. That's amazing, isn't it? All the way back when the Bible was written. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then somewhere else in the Bible it says that we can take hold of our thoughts and our fears and our worries, and we can deal with them. It says, take captive every thought. So thoughts aren't facts. We can take hold of them and we can deal with them, and we can not let them bully us and rob us of the things that we want to enjoy. We don't have to give in to our thoughts. We don't have to let them beat us down. We really don't. So we're going to think about this practically now for a minute, and we're going to do an exercise together that can help us to challenge thoughts, or we're going to demonstrate an exercise anyway. And at the end, we'll give you a handout that has this little exercise on it. So, I don't know what kind of negative thoughts you shared with each other just now, when you, a few minutes ago, when you told each other what are some of the difficult thoughts that you have. But this is just one, as Jess and I prepared, this was just a thought that we thought maybe some people might have been thinking, maybe not, but you might have been thinking, if I go to the talk this evening, I won't have a good time because I won't have anyone to talk to and I'll feel awkward. That's potentially a thought that somebody could have had. Maybe not. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take that thought and we're going to put it on trial. As though we're taking it into the courtroom, and the judge is going to hear the evidence for and against, and then we're going to come up with the answer as to whether we think that that's a reasonable thought to have, or maybe we'll come up with a different, more balanced thought. Okay, so Jess, if I go to the talk this evening, I won't have a good time because I won't have anyone to talk to and I'll feel awkward. What evidence would you say that there is that thought could be true?
I've been to an event before and I've been on my own. I might not know anybody. Sometimes my mind goes blank, can't think of anything to say. Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Okay. So there is good evidence then that thought could be true. All right, what about evidence then that the thought is not true?
People do often chat to other people. Often I go to things and I see somebody I know, if it's local. And maybe the last time I went to an event, it was okay.
Okay. So there is some evidence then that thought is not true. Okay. Think of the person that you maybe most respect, whose opinion you maybe most respect. You don't have to say who it is. Yeah. What would they say? Someone whose opinion you really value, what would they say about that thought that you or someone else might potentially be having?
Maybe that I am quite approachable, or I'm easy to chat to.
But they wouldn't agree with the thought then.
No.
No, they wouldn't, would they? Okay. All right. So what about, let's just think, are there any advantages to thinking this thought?
I can stay at home if I follow through with it, which is quite nice. I quite like staying at home sometimes. Maybe it protects me. I won't have to feel awkward at home, so that's quite nice too.
Okay, so fair enough. There are some advantages of thinking that thought. Are there any disadvantages to thinking it?
I would miss out on something fun. I would have missed out on the cake, for sure. And a cultured experience. I would miss out on fun. Maybe on meeting potential new friends or seeing friends who I already have and would like to maintain.
So you might not see them. All right. Okay. So does it help you to think this thought? Overall, does it help you?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think it does.
It doesn't help you at all. Okay. So if we were to come up with a new balanced thought then, we haven't unfortunately had time to write up all the answers that Jess has given. That would have been better, but we didn't, just for time's sake, and also it would take a long time to write up all the answers. But once if you were to take yourself through this exercise, maybe with somebody, you could write in all the different evidence for, evidence against, what would someone else say, is it helpful? And then at the end, once you've sort of weighed it all up, you've taken it to court, you can then come up with your own new balanced thought. And so, why don't you just share what you think the balanced thought might be now that you could come up with?
Okay, so if I go to the event this evening, I might find it difficult, but I also might have some good conversations and I would enjoy those, and so I might come away feeling better. Okay. All right, so that's what you do, and we've got that written out on a handout for you so that you can take it away and remember what the questions were. So you can come and collect one at the end if you would like one. So we can choose, can't we, to focus on the more balanced, positive thought. We can choose what we focus on. There's a part of the Bible that says whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, admirable, true, has a whole list of really positive attributes. Think about those things. And we also actually have a list of some of those things, some of the things we've spoken about, but other things you can say to yourself, which you can take away. But you might say, it's actually quite hard to focus on the good things, and you can say, oh yeah, just think about positive ideas and you'll be fine. But your mind actually does keep wandering back to the worries, doesn't it? And actually our brains are being rewired so that our capacity for sustained attention is decreasing. So it's harder and harder to focus for long on something that you want to focus on positive. But that's actually also not a new thing. In the 18th century there was a philosopher called Blaise Pascal, and he said this: the sole cause of man's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his room. The sole cause of the whole of humanity's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his room. We don't really know how to stay still, do we? But the good news is that there are practices that we can adopt so that we can transform our minds and so that we are able to focus undistracted and recreate those neural pathways which can carry calm and peaceful thoughts. I'm sure you have all come across the practice of mindfulness, and it's the practice of sitting still and allowing your mind to focus on the present moment. We are awake for about 16 hours a day, and 2 of those are spent in the present moment. The rest of those hours we're thinking about the past and we're thinking about the future and worrying. So mindfulness is a practice that gives us a break from that, from worrying about the past or the future, and it brings our mind into the present moment. And it's a very old practice, and the idea is that through being present and undistracted, we can experience our relationship with God more fully. There is so much in the Bible about our minds and our thoughts and how to take care of them, and being still is a big part of that.
So we get just for 3 minutes, we're going to try a little exercise that will help us to kind of just distract ourselves from the difficult thoughts and help to calm our minds, as it were. So if you want to just kind of get comfortable, just maybe uncross your legs if you're sitting with your legs crossed. You probably are, that's how I like to sit. Feet flat on the floor, perhaps hands on your thighs. And I encourage you just to look down. You close your eyes if you're happy to do that. You might not be comfortable to close your eyes, so maybe just look down. I'm going to just take us through this exercise. So just invite you just to begin by bringing yourself into the present moment. So remember, we're often thinking about the past and the future. We're going to use this exercise to bring ourselves into the present moment by connecting with any solid surface with which our body is in contact. So you might want to just notice how the floor really holds your feet, or the chair really holds your legs and your back. If you've got your hands on your thighs, you'll notice how your thighs really support your hands in a way that you maybe haven't noticed before. And sometimes when we begin to notice this, we start to feel quite sort of heavy because we notice how we're supported. Just deliberately adopt a lengthened and dignified posture. And then just ask yourself, what's going on for me right now? What's going on for me right now? You can acknowledge any sensations in your body. Just acknowledge any thoughts, any emotions, and just stay with them just for a few moments. Just notice everything, negative, positive, don't fight it. Just allow it all to be present. And now when you're ready, just turn your attention to your breathing, to your breath. And gently focus on each in-breath and each out-breath. Follow your breath as it comes in and goes out. One breath after another. If it's your habit to pray, you might want to use a sort of prayer. I love to use a very, very old prayer called the Jesus Prayer. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. On your in-breath, Jesus Christ, Son of God, and then on the out-breath, have mercy on me. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Just following your breath as it comes in and goes out. One breath after another, breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Allowing the breath to be an anchor, bringing you into the present moment and helping you to connect with that sense of awareness and stillness. And now when you're ready, just begin to expand your awareness of your breath away from your breath into awareness of your whole body. It's almost as if your whole body were breathing, and become aware of your body again in the space that we're in, and become aware of your facial expression, which may actually have changed since we began to do this exercise. And you can expand your awareness to the space in front of you and behind you and on either side of you and below and above you. And when you're ready, just invite you to come back. Hopefully you haven't gone to sleep. Or maybe you have, because often when we do that exercise, we find that we do fall asleep. How does that feel, having done that? Anyone want to say?
Relaxing.
Relaxing, relaxing, relaxing. Yeah?
Everything went away.
Weight off the shoulders, someone says. Yeah.
Everything went away.
Everything went away. Yeah. It's amazing. And do you know, that's just such a simple gift that God has given us, our breathing. And it's always with us. So wherever we are, we can always use our breath to help us to come away from the distractions. It kind of helps us to come away from autopilot, as it were, and just bring our attention into the present moment. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift. Okay, we're just drawing to the end now, and as we finish, we want to share something with you that was a really big help during a very difficult time for our family. I've told you I have 5 children, and when our youngest was 9, so Jess was probably 20, I think, at the time. You were in first year of uni, weren't you? We went to a family wedding, and our 9-year-old went off to play. We were all having drinks when we just arrived, and he went off to play outside on the grass. He has a few little friends there with him. After a few minutes, our number 2 child, not our son, my oldest son, decided that he was getting a bit hot and he wanted to go outside and see if he could find our youngest, Joss. So he went round and asked a friend, do you know where Joss is? So he went round and he found him, and he had fallen from a balcony about 20 feet, and he had landed on a kind of tarmac surface on this sort of like a driveway that went down under the building that we were all in. Well, to cut a long story short, he was airlifted to Great Ormond Street Hospital. We obviously went to, and he was in a coma for 9 days. He had to have half of his skull removed. And we just didn't know actually whether, what was going to happen. We didn't know whether we'd lost him, and whether if he lived, how he would be. So it was, as you can imagine, a very, very worrying time for our whole family. And our thoughts played havoc. Of course, it's a very human response, isn't it, when something really tragic happens. And during that time, a friend sent us this piece that I'm going to read to you. And it's actually an account of a dream that somebody had. She was called Ariana. And interestingly, it's a kind of interpretation of Psalm 23, which Berna mentioned, didn't you, about one of the pieces upstairs was based on Psalm 23. So I just thought that was a rather nice link this evening. So I encourage you just to listen. You might want to close your eyes again, but you don't have to. And I'm going to just share with you this dream and what we kind of learnt from it and what actually this person who had the dream learnt. I had a dream, and in it I was reading Psalm 23, verse 5. It says this: "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." I saw myself dining at a huge round table with wisdom on my right and strength on my left. Around the table were seated others: love, hope, faith, joy, peace. And they were all interacting with me, chatting, all part of my circle of companions. Then I became aware over in the corner of the room there were 3 shadowy figures, and I knew that they were fear, worry and doubt. And I asked God why they were there. God said, "Life on earth is a public place, much like a restaurant. That's why the table is prepared in the presence of your enemies. Fear, doubt and worry will always linger on the fringes of life, but who sits at your table is by invitation only. Be careful with whom you choose to keep company." I could see that each time I looked over to where the 3 figures were huddled, they would look up to see if I was inviting them over. They inched closer and closer, peeking in over the goings-on at my table, trying to see if I was giving them permission to take a seat. Then, as I looked around the table, I saw that there were only enough seats for the companions I already had. God said, "Your friends cannot stay if you give their seat to one of the 3. And I saw fear standing behind peace, looking to see if I would give the nod and ask peace to give up her seat to fear. I woke up and realised the battle I faced would be won or lost in my mind. Faith is a powerful weapon, and the first thing the enemy will try to do is separate you from the companions God has given you to do your thought life with. When we're overwhelmed by anxious thoughts, friends, we can choose who we entertain at our table. We can choose what thoughts we will allow our minds to focus on. And just to say that our son, in case I forget, he made a miraculous recovery, and he's 25. And he's just as he was, a little bit older. I'm going to pray. I'm just going to say a prayer now. If it's not your habit to pray, then I invite you just to listen. But if it is, then I invite you just to join with us as we pray. Dear Father God, we thank you that you care about us so much. Thank you that it really matters to you how we think and how we feel and how we do life. Thank you, Lord, that you want us to know peace, that you've said that in so many places in the Bible. You don't want us to fear, you want us to know peace. Thank you, Lord, that you've told us ways that we can know that peace. And thank you, Lord, that we also know that you love us so much, and that wherever we are, whatever we're doing, you are always with us, and you're always helping us. Help us to remember that, Lord. Amen. 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 Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening and for giving us an opportunity to tell you a little bit about mental health and how mental health challenges are real and normal, and that with some support and with some know-how we can begin to overcome those difficulties, and we hope too that you've seen that we have a God who wants the absolute best for us. And he has given us wisdom in the Bible that can bring us supernatural peace when life feels really anxious. It's made a huge difference for us and for our family, and we really hope that it makes a difference for you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stick around, so if anyone has any particular questions that they wanted to ask, then you are very welcome to. And come up and get a handout as on your way back up to find the cake.
Wow. I personally, I don't know about everybody else who's sitting here tonight, have been treated to something quite special. I've written so many notes, it's untrue. I'm the mother of 2 Gen Z children, although they would call it Gen Z. And certainly that's made things, it's really given me pause for thought on that. I love the idea that anxiety robs you or is spoiling things for you, and that is our choice. I also love that we can renew our neural pathways. And thoughts aren't facts. I've written that down too. And I'm going to frequently take myself to court from now on. One of the wonderful things though is that idea about mindfulness. We've all heard so many things about mindfulness, but that idea that it's an ancient practice of spending time with God, and that's what prayer is. It is just having a conversation with God, and it doesn't, for those of us that don't have a faith in the room, that is something that you can easily do. You can just spend time talking with God in your head. That's not so weird, is it? So, how wonderful that's been tonight, and I just want to give Jess and Lindsay our thanks for giving us something really quite special. So can we all put our hands together? Okay, so please, if you want to have a chat with Jess and Lindsay, they're here at the front. Alternatively, do go back upstairs and enjoy the exhibition. It will be open for a little bit longer. There are drinks and there's still more cake. So please help yourselves.